I will call this regular meeting of the Waterbury Selectboard to order for Monday, August 4th, 2025. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Motion by Kane, second by Tori to approve the agenda as written. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? All right. Next up is the consent agenda. We have two items on the consent agenda this evening: the minutes of our last regular select board meeting on July 21st, and a request to pay the permit for JWD Corporation for Cars Field as part of the car show. Is there a motion with regards to consent?
Second.
Motion by Tori, second by Kane to approve the consent agenda. Any questions?
I'll just note that Vitalized Waterbury is working with the antique car show, but we do not benefit in any particular ways. Discussion and vote.
Any other? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed and any abstaining? Right, we've approved the consent agenda. This brings us to public comment. This is an opportunity to comment on anything that is not on the warned agenda that we have copies of in the room and is posted online. We ask that folks keep their comments under 5 minutes. We do have a next meeting agenda item. If things warrant further discussion, we can schedule that then. Is there anyone in the room or online who would like to speak on public comment? Yeah, shower floor. And thank you. We ask that folks come up just so that the owl can hear you. I think we are working on it right now. Thank you. Is that so?
Otherwise.
So street. Now people are dumping on their street. There, there's a big box that jump there now.
Underneath.
Not underneath, it's that little turn off where people kind of go down and go fishing sometimes, that little dirt layabout. If you drive by there tonight, it's still there. It was there when we came down this afternoon. So again, lights, cameras, something that we can either catch people doing these things or signs to, put them on alert, and that if they do get caught, they pay a fine. I don't know, but it just keeps, especially now with because dead ends at this point, but still happening. So I'll keep bringing it up until we get solution.
So Cheryl, we actually, myself and some other town staff, we saw a demo the other day about security cameras, outdoor models. And we are getting a test model for a month for free. So we can, talk internally about where we wanted to put it, but maybe this could be one.
There's also, I think, some fence post. So if the follow up again. Yeah, thank you. That would be great.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Roger?
I just wanted to offer a shout out to our Public Works Department for patching up Randall Street. They did a great job, and everyone's really excited about it.
Anyone else wants to speak on public forum in the room or online? And online, Evan or Sandy, can you hear us okay? I don't know if you're in the chat, Tom. Give us a thumbs up. We're getting an odd voice quality support.
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Great, thank you, Sandy. Appreciate it. All right, last call, anyone else for public comment? All right, we will move to our next agenda item, which is proposal for sliding scale for recreation after school program. Our recreation director is here to speak to this. And I'll let you take off unless you want to leave it someone else.
Yep, go ahead.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Olsias, the Recreation Director. Thank you for giving me some time today to talk about this proposal. Earlier this summer, I was asked to prepare options for the Waterbury Recreation 2025-2026 after school program because our enrollment has been declining. The past school year, we had an average of 10 kids per day. That meant on some days we had as few as 4 children, which is very few to be running an after-school program. We do operate a solid program. I do want to, after dumping that fact on you, I do want to say we operate a solid program. It is recreation based. We offer a no screens program. So we, with the exception of very, very, very terrible weather, we use no screens. And we employ 5 to 6 high school staff. That means about 1 to 2 come each day. So there is some youth employment successes with the program as well. So with that very brief background, I know there's more in the document I shared, but Waterbury Rec would like to move towards a sliding scale fee program for the payment from families. This comes to both address our declining enrollment. Some of our most consistent feedback from families is that they're signed up for multiple activities. And for them, it makes more sense for their kid to ride the bus home and be home alone for an hour or 2 and then come to our program or go somewhere else. Because I know I work closely with the library. They have changed their policy. So those kids may have been coming to the library and then go to soccer, basketball, lacrosse, whatever that may be. And then changing to a sliding scale fee would also move us closer to the library was a non-supervised program, but obviously was a free program, and that would allow us to hopefully still serve some of those families that were using the library as a type of care option. So in my proposal, there's a lot in here. For the 2025 budget, we did say that we would have revenue of $59,000. Right now, we're at about 30,000 from the first half of the year. Obviously, ours was a calendar year. After school is the school year. So we would want to generate about $30,000 this fall to match the 2025 budget. I believe that would put us, if we had half or higher attendance in our program, we'd want between $15 and $20 as our average fee from families. Which I think is incredibly reasonable for a childcare option, and is about $10 less than what we're currently, or what we charged families for the last year. I think that with the changes in the library, as well as we've already had outreach from a number of families wanting to sign up for the after-school program, we would certainly be above halfway full, if not. So I guess that is the crux of my proposal. I'm happy to answer any questions or explain anything.
Do you just want to touch on the why and their trends?
Yeah, so the other big after school program in the area is the Y Live Wires. It's based at Brookside Primary School. They also have seen a decline over since the pandemic until now. They used to run a program that served about 80 kids, and now they serve a program that serves 26 children. And that's because they are a regulated program. So they have to stick very closely to the required state ratios. After school program, I'm going in too far, but after school ratios are 1 to 13. So if they have 26 kids, they have 2 staff at all times. Staffing is the other big problem with any sort of after care job.
Board members have questions about this?
Do you think declining simply because of our fee structure, or is there another?
I think the issue with having a specific symptom is that we run a really small program. At most we can serve 23 kids. So in the past year, we've had like 2 families opt for something else, and they had multiple children. So like 4 or 5 children leaving our program can leave a big hole, and we were not at full enrollment, with the exception of just a few days this year. So, if we're at 20 5 kids leave, that already drops us to 15. So I would say, you know, there are certain family dynamics, you know, there might be an older sibling, so the younger one can go home. There, again, a lot in the springtime, it was almost like a rite of passage, heading to the library and walking to the library from school. Certainly was a thing that a lot of young people or children did. And then I think it's just, we live in a community where kids sign up for multiple extracurriculars, and it was just the choice of, do you stay in an aftercare program or do you sign up for soccer? And figure out what you do.
I'll just mention that Caterina presented her proposal to the rec committee this past week. I think it's well considered, and was been worked out in direct collaboration with the library and fits the facilities and for staffing. So I'll move to approve the proposal.
Second.
Roger, is there a second? Can I just ask, is there a time bound for this proposal? Let's say.
Roger's motion.
Yeah, I'll take for.
Coming school year.
School year.
The change to, yeah, for the academic year, is that correct?
Yes, we have it here, closing in June.
Do we have other questions or discussion? I don't want to ask the budget question, but I would say, Sean, just to clarify, and just the name there is a fixed cost of budget. You have the overall budget if you're the top of this.
You know, it's not a huge item in either direction. I'm also hopeful that enrollment's gonna grow as part of this. So I think we'll know a whole lot more in a pretty short amount of time.
I would also say. So not that, I need to be a downer, but, that's probably what it would look like.
Any further questions from them?
I'm here to support Katerina. What we heard at the library was that people couldn't, that they felt that the expense was too much, especially in times when they had shorter periods of time that the kids needed care, which is part of why there's a library. But as her numbers are going down, ours are going way up. Program isn't a program, it's a public phase that to rise. So it was starting to feel that we need to make a change to ensure everybody's safety.
What I would say is a sliding scale fee allows the family to consider that. So if their child is only coming for an hour of the day, they can choose to pay $10, $15, and then the kid who is staying till 5 might pay that. So we will, for the registration process, they will register with a registration fee and then fill out a Q&A to answer those questions and help them consider what their daily rate is. And then on the admin side, we'll apply that daily rate so that they haven't.
Any other questions or comments? Anything you want to add? I don't know, have I covered?
No, I think really the top items, so thank you.
And just emphasizing, you noted that this was so having that settled in a timely manner, that'll be important.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we have motion, last call for questions. All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstaining? All right, you are all set. Thank you for coming in. Okay. And with that, we are ahead of schedule, but I saw a number of folks come in, I think, for the Jam for the Parks follow-up permit review. I know we have some printed items. Our minute taker, Cheryl Casey, is not here in person, so I will just ask everyone that if you mind just writing your name down so I can read it in minutes. We like rogue across the room, Selectboard facilitating, I've gotten a walk. All right, with that, I will move us to Jam for the Parks follow-up permit review. I know a number of folks were in here last week. We have some follow-up documents. We're running out of schedule, so thank you for being here early.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I'd be happy to. My name is Mark Ray, I'm the owner, and Stowe Tiger, here to present, answer any questions on behalf of Jam for the Parks. I think you're familiar, we were here, a few weeks ago, an event raising funds for the adopted parks. It'll be on September 6th at the Waterbury. Thank you. Master from the internet. The safety and security plan and then some. Did that make your round?
Yeah, I think what I have in our is the map, the security and safety plan, and the team roles and responsibilities.
Yep.
And at our last meeting, we approved this and then kind of getting confirmation.
Sure.
My one question would be, I did notice some discrepancies between team roles and responsibilities with things like security lead contacted and then having them very integrated in the security plan. So have that actually been confirmed?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, it's not talking about under they're all set. And that's they're in the plan. And we've got, excuse me, an ops lead, we've listed on and there who we're taking that on more CD.
I'm also saying that you two want to.
That's right. Yep, they have it.
Great. Other questions or input from the board or anything else you want to share with us about the events and updates? Thank you.
Want to comment on some of the items here. This is a lot more thorough than the last one we got.
Yeah.
All the way down to the radios.
Yeah.
Style of radios.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is great. One of my main concerns here is remote parking, which was a concern last time. You've got Ivy Computer, which is that's a new addition.
That is, yes, it's close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Zen Barn and then Fisherman Residence.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have to go that far out, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was some concern from some folks who were here at the last meeting about parking on Bethel Road, where when the Fisherman's lot, when the
Right.
barn lot fills up,
Yep.
people tend to park on the road, and there was some concern about that. Is that something that would be addressed?
Yeah, so 100%, it will not allow it. So there will be a security along at each parking stop. Signage would be created for putting on the side of the road, right? Make sure this lot is full, moving people along to the center lot. I honestly be very surprised if we would make it to Zen Park at this point. Over 100 available spots on site at the Waterbury Center State Park. And you know, the spots that are available at Ivy, they should account for 550 people according to most town regulations. I think in terms of numbers, it would be over 500. So I'd be surprised if we got that far. And then if we make it to Zenbar, they're definitely not going to go out again. So I did have a question on, I think, folks, is there a number that we wanted to cut this off on? I believe. I don't think we're gonna get to that point personally, but might be a number we want to have on hand. And I think that was a question that I proposed to the fire chief, the fire department, and EMT to see if there was a comfort level for that. We think that we can host 1,000 people there. I think that, yeah.
Other questions or comments? Oh, there you go, Sarah. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Sure. So I think the plan is pretty good. I did respond back with some concerns. The permit called for 300 with a 500 throughout the day. People were going, but then today there was an email that you could hold up to 1,000. So I'm just concerned about what the numbers actually are. And is there going to be a cut? Well, is it 300 or is it 500 or is it 1,000?
Well, we don't know, right? Because we don't know how many are going to show. We're happy to cut it off at a certain point if the powers to be have a strong feeling on that. I mean, I think it's just like any event that's open to the public. You just don't know what the weather might have a big impact on that. And so we can't totally forecast how many are going to buy tickets or go. And ultimately, I don't know if there is a legal capacity on the state park. I think why the
State park should be able to pay. That's And then my other question was, people, you're shutting off the boat ramp, which I totally understand. That's gonna create an issue at Lush Hill. Just be aware. So, and it's already for years an ongoing complaint. But are people gonna not be allowed to dock their boats because they won't? So that could just add to the numbers and congestion. That's it. I like to plan for worst case scenario. I get that it probably won't get worst case scenario, but if it doesn't, then I'm happy.
Right.
Is there a way we can redirect boat traffic to Little River?
If you have law enforcement water. Like a state park.
Well, to the boat launch down on Little River Road. Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's usually full. I'm not friends of both, I don't, but it's usually full, both of them.
This one is, luckily, from my experience, I don't know, fairly local here is, it's after Labor Day. Then folks are back, so we don't have quite the typical traffic in the summer, but, where I've seen travel is cut, reduced quite a bit. During that time, but I was just to back that up.
So my thing is just, do you have a plan that is what creates the number? If it gets congested and cars start getting blocked in, is there a number that we're gonna have, or is it just gonna become chaotic?
Could you answer, just what do you mean about cars getting blocked?
Well, if more vehicles are allowed in, and then they start blocking each other in, and then they start parking on the sides of the road. So if you have people there saying absolutely not.
Please,
Yeah. Which I think is great. I just look at the worst case scenario, and then you have people in boats. And then access is there gonna be clear, 12, 14-foot road access all the way through the area? In the event that an ambulance or a fire truck needs to get down through there. These are all things that I think about when we're looking at planned events. And then creating more traffic on Blush Hill. We already can't get down through there most of the time with a fire truck. So this is just gonna add, that's not your problem. But that's just gonna create more issues. So those are just things that I think about when we have events like this. And it's not, I don't want to say on whether or not you can have this. I really don't care. I think it's great. But I think there's some things that the board really should consider. And again, some of that is not your problem, and it's not necessarily your fault.
right. Well, and ours to explain, certainly, I think there's lots of events that create different traffic patterns that we have to accommodate. The bridge is down now, and we have 4th of July, the parades, and so I think we can overcome that. I think happy to put signs up or happy to put detail out. I think these are great points. It's certainly something that can be overcome with the proper signage notifications. Those go out on Footplate Forum. Communication is out there. The parks are going to be letting people know well in advance. We'll be passing out information as they come in, starting this week, hopefully. If not the latest next week, folks that come on a regular basis are going to know that's happening and how they can plan to either attend or adjust their plans. And happy to have somebody monitor Blush Hill and put out a sign that says full at a certain point, if that's appropriate. Be happy to work with the state parks on plan for that. That's a suggestion.
I think a lot full sign mandating the amount of cars that can park down there. Once the parking spots are taken, they're taken, right? No more cars.
You're talking about Blush Hill?
No, I'm talking about the event space, right? So that we have a lot full, right, sign, and then the overflows, the Ivy computer, Zenbar.
But a lot of people, just like the state park typically does, and the state police, excuse me, the sheriff will be at the intersection of Route 100 and the entrance to the state park. So there won't be a lot of people once it's full. And then we'll have the same detail with a sheriff up front and security within Ivy Computers park. And once it's full, we don't intend, like if one car spot opens up the state park, we don't intend to fill that one spot. I think once it's full today. And just not allowing more people in. That way we don't have to worry about cars during that time entering. We want traffic only at that point to fix it. And that way, we can, that's facilitate at the height of computers and Zenbar if necessary. We're not going to go past Zenbar. And we can make that come off. I said, good in terms of parking, so nobody's going to go to. We don't need to go to a personal house. But we make sure that we have the signage and the staff, both security and officers as necessary to facilitate those parking areas.
Question?
Yeah, as the chief said, I think that the chief concern really is the vehicles potentially blocking the way to emergency vehicles. Parking along the sides of the road, which could potentially block access. It will be important, but in terms of the individuals, we had over 1,000 people at the Waterbury Arts Fest a couple of weeks ago, and I think that in terms, as long as you got parking under control, I think we have that.
I'll know that I'm really excited that parade and event permit is on our upcoming agenda items, because I'll just say, as a select board member, having to come in and litigate these one-on-one, I think we want to make sure the public is safe, that we're getting it from our local leaders, but also wanting to make sure you as someone trying to run a benefit event as it is in our community have a clear pathway to success. So it feels like we've heard the most important things of that. Law enforcement is confirmed that your on-site security is confirmed. Some specific guidance around marketing, sure lots are not overfilling. Any other concerns for folks? Again, our conditional approval was based on those things. Does the board feel those spaces are covered, or are there any other questions?
I'll just make a comment for the day of the event. Obviously, the police are going to know that this event's going on, but maybe we should make a note to the Vermont State Police to keep an eye on Blush Hill if they're around.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the cutoff is for the state police to sign a permit, but have you researched that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We've been in touch with the state police. This year.
So I want to make sure you didn't like
Pass. Yeah.
pass that and all of a sudden you don't have approval from them.
Right. Yep.
And it's 2,000, we do specify that a public event is required by the state. That is part of the goal to have that streamlined.
Yeah.
Again, any other things. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for the very thorough follow-up on this. We appreciate it. Hope it's a successful and safe event.
See you there.
Thank you. Thank you.
We need to act.
Okay, want to make another approval? I mean, there may be an approval conditional on this for you and should keep coming. Go ahead, Austin.
Sorry.
Motion by Roger, second by Queen. Is there any further discussion? Right, all those in here, say aye. Aye. Right. That approved. Thank you again for coming in. We will continue ahead of schedule, so it is now 7:02, and we will move to our 17 items, which is more capital plan review. I've got feedback about this, so just to name at town meeting this year and also in general, we've just talked about developing a capital plan for the town. We've gone through a number of different municipal departments. We did public works last meeting, but on the vehicle side, and so for this week, I think we have more to come on that, and Tom, I would turn it over to you.
Yep, just to, I guess just to close out this year, we haven't gotten the final invoices for Newland Flats, but Newland Flats was basically this year's big project. Next year, the big project is really Barnes Hill Road, really beginning at the water plant and heading over towards the Stowe border, is where it really needs it the most. Park Row is another area we did patching on Park Row this year. Park Row East will be a question. We may want to consider delaying that, based on what we see coming at Stanley Wasson and or Randall Meadow, and Randall Meadow again is 100,000 yards of fill, so we're going to damage the road pulling that out for sure.
Doesn't that Park Road fix?
Yeah. You're right. Did I put that under East? Yeah. Rotarian Way is a relatively small piece, and then the Ripley Road is the curve that we've talked about a few times, extending the pavement where Newland Flats and Ripley meet and going up that hill. We've put new material on that hill this year, so we think it's going to be ready next year. 2027 has a couple interesting projects, I think. The Ice Center Road and Armory are relatively long roads with a fairly high price tag, pretty low usage, compared to, I think, most of our major public roads. So I think it's a question for the board about, do you want to spend the money at that time? What the priority is? The Armory is really falling apart. If you drive the Armory Bridge and head to the Armory itself, there's some areas where it's more pothole than road. It's almost, gone to grab what hasn't been paved in a long, long time. But now the facility will be used this winter by the state or their contractor. I suspect at some point that shelter may become a year-round shelter. So just part of the consideration. And again, Ice Center Road is not a huge amount of traffic, and a lot of it, I think, stops at the mountain bike parking. But nonetheless, the road is not in great shape. I think that was held off a little bit because of the park study, and now that we know I think we got a pretty final determination for the use of the land, and we know the skate park construction will not be there. I think it's time to look at it again. Most of the rest of the plan for 2027 is shorter sections. But the note at the bottom, I've got the road prep. 2027 includes a pretty hefty amount for culverts, catch basin repairs, shoulder work, and Gupta Road. As it stands today, we'd likely contract that. That part would be contracted out, but then 2028, we would consider paving, budget permitting, the entirety of Gupta Road, except for that little stretch that we just did last year with leftover funding. So that's an awful big number.
That's a mighty big number.
May want to plan for that the next couple of years in terms of building that paving fund. May want to think about local option tax for some of that. We have a $500,000 paving budget now. Perhaps we can grow that a bit in the future years. Perhaps we can underspend, perhaps if we have in 2027, $385,000 in projects, we can still budget 500 and bank that. And there's a strategy to get to there, and perhaps Gupta Road is a multi-year project. But we wanted to show you the full number as it stands today.
Because last year you would surface the section sort of in the middle of.
Yeah, just the section between bridges. So this would be for everything but that section. That section should hold up fine for quite a while.
Roger came and I.
I'm wondering if there are any culvert replacements or water or sewer issues going to impact any of these road considerations. Just making sure that the timing is right so they don't pave something that needs to be dug up the following.
There so often is. We try to coordinate with EFUD and all that before doing anything major. But yeah, there so often is. all the rural roads, you try to deal with the culverts before the project and deal with the shoulders. You know, ideally before with Neeland Flats, we're doing the shoulders afterwards. We just didn't have time to get it done. But yeah, that's part of the coordination challenge. Part of the budget is just balancing how much you can do with staff versus contractors. Yeah, and then for the village area, there's always water sewer considerations, and that's part of Park Row.
Okay.
For 2027 Armory Drive,
Mhm.
um. As there is one single property after a certain length of road, would it be worth to just rip the top off the road, turn it to dirt?
Yeah, potentially that's something that we're thinking about. It's just if that's cheaper.
Yeah.
Or at least, you know, somehow grading out, leveling out a bit, just dealing with what we have.
Right. And then I guess the follow-up would be the same comment for Ice Center Road. Would it be more cost effective just to make it some dirt road?
And I think it'll become a dirt road if I don't think we have to make it. I think it'll get that way in its own. At some point, but that's essentially what happened to Little River is that Little River just simply was not repaved for several decades. And then we did it 2023, I believe.
Well, that first sentence.
But I think it had been 30 plus years before it was paved.
From a capital planning perspective, do we have a listing of, so I'm reflecting for other sections of this plan, we had, you know, fire truck, year purchase, expected lifespan, and there was a little bit, do we have something to that equivalent for roads? I'll name that. Members of the public here, hi Mike, and Christie has another stuff asset, and I just like, does it exist and we're not showing it and we're just looking at.
No, we have all the history. Our typical life that we get after we repave, from what I can tell, is 12 to 14 or 15 years. And so that's generally the cycle. You know, you don't necessarily go by that. You go by what you see in the ground. But that's the general cycle. So Neeland Flats was 13 years was the last time we paved that prior to this year. So that seems to be what we're averaging in general. So yeah, we can go through all our records and kind of pull all that. And then the village roads, which in general just get, you know, I think, you know, the side streets get a lot less traffic, not as many heavy work vehicles, that sort of thing. We get quite a bit longer. And I think with our salt reduction, it's going to be a long time for some of those roads. But yeah, we can pull the history and go back. And if you wanted to see what we've done over a longer period, we can do that.
I don't know, has to be right away. I will say for me as a planning, but I think that are we keeping up with what we have and what it costs to do that would be interesting to dive into a little.
Sure.
You have another question, Arthur?
Well, I was interested in that question of paved versus gravel roads because, you know, we're extending Neeland Flats up onto Ripley on the corner, and it does get off Ring Road there. I'm just wondering if there's been any cost analysis about paving versus the panic that we face annually getting roads passable.
Yeah, a little bit. And it's hard to make a real exact determination, but it seems to be really close financially. No, I think as we go far, you know, further and further for gravel, and as those vehicles get more expensive, it probably will sway the other way. But I can't tell you in 5 years would the pendulum swing again for some reason, which is the challenge. The other challenge is we've looked at strategically paving some shorter roads or sections of roads, and you've got to look at that carefully. You know, we looked at a number of roads with a contractor and they just said, look, they're in the paving business, but you'd be foolish to pave this road. It's I think it's more of a case by case basis. So
Depends
the.
on what top beds.
Yeah, and Neelan Flats, the conversation has been that we've historically had a lot of problems with that curve. So we put an awful lot of the grindings from Neelan Flats on that curve, which should give it in the past, it's been a really good sub base for us, and that's lasted a long time. And we seem to get away with, again, I think 12 to 15 years in the gravel roads, and we put a really good pace on them like that. So the question has been, okay, great. We won't consider paving that road unless we get through mud season without any issues whatsoever, because we should. But then again, if we get through mud season and the road is fine, are we done? Do we give ourselves an A and we've completed the task? So it's always a little bit of an open question.
Stowe Street, well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, this is just paving. Yes, that's our road. So I've talked to Bill Woodruff about that issue, and I think we're going to undertake a correction for that this fall. But it's on the list. Well, this is just paving, so that's a water issue, so it's a different issue. Yeah, but it's just a patch. It's not, just a culvert issue, I believe. And then on sidewalks, we should be ready in a couple of weeks. Bill's done some analysis, and we want to spend a little more time getting some additional perspectives on that, because sidewalks, to some extent, it's there's some sidewalks that we have 2,000 feet of sidewalks that are 4-foot wide sections, and those should be upgraded to 5 feet, which is the code. And our sidewalk plows are 4 feet. So if we upgrade, we do a lot less damage to people's lawns that we repair every spring. So we're going to work on getting a quote for that first. A number for you to consider will be, in certain sections, we might suggest curb. Granite curb lasts a whole lot longer. It's also quite a bit more expensive. So just something to think about. And then the rest of it, we're going to just sort of divide into categories and rate it and see what we need, or what we think we need. But just often, don't quote me on this because we'll have a better number in a few weeks, but off the cuff, to upgrade the 2,000 feet we need, we think we're looking for sidewalk in the range of $150 a linear foot, so $300,000 for 2,000 feet. Doesn't include curb in that. May not always need to put in a new curb, certain sections you will. And then with sidewalk projects, the challenge is the challenge can be, if you're pulling sidewalks and you're leveling the sidewalks, you're dealing with tree roots. So you wind up killing trees as just every sidewalk project. That's the challenge you deal with. So you try to work with property owners. Sometimes they might not want the tree, and you might work the tree committee and take out the tree. Sometimes you'll try to work with people and the tree might die a year later. And you've just got to deal with those issues as they come. But the trees can add a fair amount of cost to that. We've taken down a couple big trees in the village this year with utilities around them, and it's $4,000 for a tree. Not every tree is a big tree with utilities around it, but they're certainly not free no matter what. So we'll work on that and get some better estimates. But I think we'll be there in a couple of weeks. I guess my argument for granite curb is that this curb was put in right in front of our building not that long ago. It is not a granite curb, and it's already pretty beat up from the plows. And there are sections of granite curb in the village that Woody could point out to you that are decades old that look new. So that'll be a conversation soon.
Are there any conversations with the tree committee or Public Works about, when you have to take out trees that are in the green space between the sidewalk and the road, replanting them towards the property side, just because it seems like you're asking for stuff on that green space.
Yeah, I think it's been a pretty big topic of conversation the last year about some of the tree issues. I mean, if you're planting them out of the green space, they're effectively not our trees. I'm not sure all the property owners want that. I think we've just got to be strategic about what we plant. And I think the era of, silver maples that grow to be gigantic might be beyond us, and that the dwarf trees are probably in general, I think the way that things are going in downtowns.
Questions on? So, not the home. And
Just that we can get you the longer history, and that's all in there. Yep, there's a few memos here. First one is a June memo from Alec, and we are working to get this updated because it's an older estimate. So we're working with Jay McDonald and Stantec, who engineered it on a new number. So the number presented is from 2021 with a cost adder added to it, and this is for the bridge/large culvert right here at the roundabout. And if Bill Sheplek were here, he would tell you the history, which was that bridge was not included in the downtown project because it would have gotten the project beyond the scope of which an Act 250 permit would be needed. I think Mike Hedges can probably tell you that history pretty well too. So it's a little bit of dangling participle the town tried to get the state to pay for at the time. Part of Alec's estimate is that it includes that they think that we can do this bridge in 3 phases, so that 2 lanes of traffic would always be open. And so there's cones, there's sawhorses, there's maybe flagging at times, but there's not the complexities that go with closing it or having a temporary light or anything weird like that around a roundabout, which would be, I think, much more expensive and difficult. So that's when we'll have an updated number for maybe not 2 weeks, but I think certainly the end of the month. And then going further along, we've got a longer list of some other bridges. And bear in mind, Alec is in my mind a classic engineer and wants all of our bridges new. So in Alec's mind, whenever I talk to him, you work on a bridge in 2024 and 2025, you put it back in the plan. So Bridge 3 is the one that he sees as one of the next bridges, and that's the ones near Vienne's Estates Road, just not far down Guptill. We had done the bridge past that last year with some ARPA funds. And Bridge 3 basically needs some similar work. Part of the work too, they can also widen the guardrails a little bit, and the bridge is pretty darn narrow. And then Bridge 5 Guptill is further down, so we had done Bridge 4 in the middle as part of that. The Winooski Street Bridge is a real interesting one. There's an older agreement which Alec has, and he forwarded to me, that basically says that the state is to do some regular maintenance on that bridge, and the bridge is co-owned by Waterbury and Duxbury. The state has not done the maintenance over the years, and so quite how we address this going forward, I'm a little unclear, but at some point there's an agreement. They should honor the agreement. And no number for this one yet, but getting a quote for the painting work, which again, the state should do, but at some point it's gotta get done. We'll have to figure that out. The Shaw Mansion Road culvert, which we had issues with the washout of the 2024 storm. Culvert was fine, but we do have a report from Grenier that we should consider upsizing the culvert. And that's $130,000 job. And much of that is just the culvert itself is a huge part of that price.
Didn't we upgrade after?
We didn't upgrade it after the washout. We just fixed it. And the culvert itself was fine. We've had a couple of more minor issues since with a couple heavy storms we've had, but no major washout.
Great.
Greg Hill was replaced and upsized.
What is Bridge 14?
I believe 14 is.
So Bridge 3 is near Vienna's Estates, but Bridge 14.
Give me a minute. Oh, I think you left. Sorry. That's gone. That should be cut out. I deleted that before. That was the bridge we did last year. I didn't delete the whole blurb by accident.
Got it.
And the Hollow Road culvert is another one where I think, and Bill Woodruff thinks that 2027 is very premature, but that's one where at some point we'll have to replace that culvert just because it's beginning to rust. And at some point we've got a hydrology study, so we should upsize that culvert. Haven't had problems with it to my knowledge in terms of any washouts, but it's in there. I also just want to go back a minute to the bridge right here. I'm really hopeful that can be a state project. It's the bridge right here, which once we get the updated number, I'm sure it won't go down from the initial estimate. They're obviously spending a lot of money on the Stowe Street Bridge, so they're not going to put us on their priority list and get that done next year. But I'm hoping that might be the next big one that we have a conversation with VTrans about and get funding. The other VTrans project potential we'll have to think about is the traffic lights at the Blush Hill Stowe Street intersection. We've got some leftover grant fund to work on sidewalks there, but there's been some continuous conversation about the traffic lights and adding lights and reconfiguring those, and that gets very expensive quickly. So the question will be, I think, for the board is, at some point, which opportunity do we want to pursue and what's the most important for us?
It's a state project.
Covers engineering for the sidewalks. And that's
not the traffic.
It is, but the current grant we have is just sidewalks. And certainly not enough to pay for the traffic lights or any real work associated with them, so. And that's it. There's some work on a bridge in Loomis Hill where Thatcher Brook runs under it, and that's a FEMA project, and that's I think relatively minor in the grand scheme of things. So I'm not on here because that's getting done. No, that's we lost some of the riprap around the bridge due to the flooding, and so that's being replaced. Some debris upstream that will be removed, and then the bridge itself it's safe in the bridge abutment. There's a void in the concrete, and so they're gonna fill that with other concrete. So that's not a huge project, and that's getting done pretty soon.
Yeah, about the Whiskey Street Bridge. So we share the responsibility for Duxbury, but it's the state's purview to paint and maintain. To paint and I think do some other basic maintenance, and it's been some time since that's been done.
And we've bugged them, but they just haven't put it in their plan.
Should we ask Duxbury to bug them too?
I think so. I understand there's a little bit of a tortured history between Waterbury and Duxbury about that bridge.
We closed that, the village closed that bridge for work. That's what wasn't happy.
Yeah. The long term of those, yeah, the state should be painting it. That should be in their budget.
Different government back then.
Yes, Tom, I'm curious, just in general, I appreciate having numbers and more basis, just to name like, in terms of capital planning, grants, just the tax rate in terms of the paid for and funded paving, local option tax. I guess this is way ahead of, this year's budget conversation, but curious how we see planning sustainably
Yeah,
for
so-
the, like we've tackled or made a contribution to gravel roads around that, but
So once we get through sidewalks and once we get through rec, and we'll soon have rec facility numbers. I will be bringing to you the full Monty, the full set of all the numbers. And then we'll, I think, just start prioritizing, and to some extent that's going to mean going after grants and knowing what the highest priorities are. To some extent that's going to be saying, hey, this can't happen in 2026. This is going to be moved to a different year. It's always an element of triage, and then to some extent doing as much early budget planning as we can.
Do you foresee in the next 3 years a question for a bond on every town meeting day agendas?
That depends on you, is my first answer, but I guess I will say that Guptill Road strikes me as big enough that we might not need to bond, but we might need to just get approval to issue some short-term notes. We haven't gotten to recreation, but the basic planning is around a 14,000 square foot facility. So that would certainly need a bond, without a doubt. And we should have those numbers pretty soon. For everything else, yeah, it's the town's budgeted for paving bonds in the past, and I'm sure we'll do it in the future. So it may well be that we at some point take a look at this plan and decide that we want to issue a bond. And sometimes it's advantageous to do that. You get for things like sidewalks. Again, to don't quote me, but 300,000 or so to get our 4-foot sidewalks to 5-foot sidewalks doesn't include curb. If you're going to do sidewalks, it makes sense to put it out to bid and do a lot of linear feet at once. You're just going to get better unit pricing. That's going to exceed our budget for everything capital highway related. So that would need to be a bond, or at least some sort of a 3-year note at least.
Right.
So I certainly foresee it, but there's a lot of in-betweens for sidewalks. We can, when we did sidewalks on Park Row and Randall, we had our crew pull the sidewalks, and we had those paved, and that took a few years and it was slower, but that's certainly an option. To figure out what level of our crew. I've seen public works departments where they take someone who's pretty experienced to operate equipment, and you hire some summer seasonal helpers. You pull it all, you do the prep work.
Right.
And you don't have sidewalks for a short period, but you get the contractor to come in and pave a fair amount at once. So there's a few different ways to bite the apple that we haven't quite got that far yet, but I guess if I had to forecast, I would say, yeah, there's likely some bond votes in front of us, and those are fairly normal routine.
other questions or comments from anyone? Pass along, knowing that there's sidewalks and much more to come. Over next to our schedule for 7:40 agenda item. Schedule related to the Boston site. I would turn it over to Tom, but just note we've discussed this. I've lost track of how many, but we had an initial draft at our last meeting, provided some feedback to Tom. I know he's met with a number of folks as well, and we have an updated draft for
Yep, so I think the updated draft is a lot more specific in general. So on the first page, with some help from Neil Leitner and the Planning Commission, I've added dimensional standards for what would apply to the lot in terms of restrictions if housing was there, and I've also added those if there was a mixed use component for the development. They're certainly different. So that's just giving it some additional specificity. On the second page, I got an email that the second bullet on the second page, I wrote that the site hasn't flooded since 2011. And I got an email over the weekend from someone saying it did indeed flood in 2023. That wasn't my knowledge. I don't recall it flooding in 2023.
There's a puddle that forms that's sizable, but it's not a flood.
Karen, back Belen. I do live at 28 Park Road and I live adjacent to the lot. Just for record, I do support housing there. And I am the one that sent the email.
Okay.
Happy to provide photos, video, but the lot will be flooded. The water came up halfway through our backyard and 2 feet within our basement. We were lucky because it stands about a foot above base elevation. If we were any lower on the property, we would have flooded our basement.
Okay.
So I think that that's really important to note, and I would like that noted.
Yeah, will do.
Thank you very much. And it did flood in 2024 this month. Not really, but not as bad as we.
Under project goals, I had some input from the housing task force. And so at their advice, in the second paragraph, defined workforce housing as affordable to individuals earning 80 to 100%, 120% of the area median income. Part of their input, there was a couple other sections they had some input. Going a little further down, I did add some modifications to the selection criteria, and did add a proposed schedule. And in speaking with some folks, in the selection criteria, there's a bullet about offering housing opportunities, current employees of local businesses or critical services, along with opportunities for relocation. So in talking to some folks who have better knowledge than myself of fair housing laws, you can't discriminate. But what you can say is, and what we could say ultimately in agreement with the developers to say, when these are marketed, Waterbury residents get first bite at the apple for a certain period of time. So that can certainly be done in a different form. And it's not live yet, but I did just make a basic web page where this and everything related could be posted. So basically proposing get this issued, and these dates can obviously be modified, get this issued ASAP, and then developers have in essence to the end of the month to say, here are the questions. All the questions and answers will be posted on the webpage for all to see, and then folks would have about 7 weeks to bring proposals before the board.
I think after reviewing this pretty straight news, I'd feel comfortable moving to go live with this with the modification about the flooding that was suggested But other than that, I'm fully comfortable taking this live and bring the request out to them.
Okay.
Should to put your head up.
I agree.
I have a couple of minor things. I think I would agree, we should just say the majority of the parcel is located within the flood hazard overlay district. That it's something that forward should be moved above with all of the other things about, like, we're not gonna get it wrong by factually stating the districts in which the parcel is located, and it is a zoning district that does have additional requirements, so.
Okay.
That from, should just state that as fact in that manner.
Okay.
We could also note that the project was aligned with the town plan. There was also feedback about families who live in the flood zone and wish to relocate. Do we want to just say we live in town? I mean, I understand the aspiration of it. If no other board members have, that's fine. I guess my other question, Tom, is that, the town will review the RFQ responses and ultimately select a developer. I've sometimes seen these types of things with language saying that we're not actually obligated to pick someone if all the responses aren't to our suiting, and just didn't.
Correct. I can add a sentence that says, intends, we have the option to throw out any and all.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah. Yep.
And proceed.
You think we should take that out? Okay.
Kind of be.
Mhm. What if we said there's further support for offering house opportunities for individuals and families who live in Waterbury but wish to relocate? I think we would change the second half of the sentence, just say opportunities to provide relocation options for Waterbury residents.
And that's allowed. If it's
That's that's my understanding. It's allowable.
First comment is, you've made 3 references to apples this meeting. Feel like
Have I?
you have apples on the brain.
I've eaten a couple.
I think. Do we all feel comfortable with the modifications, just giving it Tom? That we could go up live with this tomorrow as the dates here specify?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about how to word it. Yeah. I moved to.
So just like was raising that.
Oh, I just had one that told it going back to the preference for people in Waterbury Village. It should be forward.
Oh, wait, sorry. I got feedback online that no one from the audience can hear you if you don't come up to the table. I'm inclined to let Kane try and finish making a motion. We can still discuss it before we vote and then have you come up with that word. All right, go ahead, Kane.
I move to let's go live, it's the wrong word. Can't think of a word right now. I move to take the request for qualifications for development of a multifamily housing project at the former Stanley Watson site in downtown Waterbury, public with the modifications given to the town manager by members of the select board. That's all.
So we had a motion by Payne, a second by Roger. We have time for discussion. I have my Cheryl, please just would be off. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait, I just here. Just a comment that I made previously, hearings. Is that, and then, since talking about having preference for people in the village, thinking over smooth housing, I was thinking that, it might be good to open it to the entire town. There's a lot of elderly people getting older in town, or patient, and so that was kind of my interest in that, and that would open up housing programs. So,
I think the amendments have done that, have made it just refer to Waterbury residents and not specifically anyone in the floodplain or so.
And as a resident of Waterbury Center, I would be offended if it's just got access to the center.
Cheryl Brewer. So I think I heard last time that there's just going to be the select board reviewing the proposals. And I'm just a little concerned. I don't know what everybody's qualifications are. I don't know if they have or whatever, but you're going to be looking at construction or design proposals. And just thinking that we should have some subject matter experts, if not evaluating, at least advising this board. I don't know if any of you have an architectural degree or an engineering degree or a design, but you're going to be looking at specs and heights and measurements, and I think we really need to either TRG advise you as we move through the evaluations. I think you have a lot of qualified people on that board that are already there. I would ask that they would advise, if not be part of the evaluation of the proposals. Not saying that, you guys don't know what you're doing. I'm just saying that, in my experience, I always help subject matter expert evaluate whatever I'm buying if I don't have that expertise. So I think it's important to make sure we have somebody that has that, to understand that pricing as well. We don't want to be overpriced. We also don't want to be underpriced. We don't want somebody buying in and then find out after we've given them a job that is really their cost. That's a big concern. We see that all the time. People buying in just to bid the job, then they just keep costs up. So that would be my ask, is that we get some subject matter experts to advise. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Other questions or comments on this?
Let's see. Evaluation review.
I will just say, I think we mentioned this to Tom, and the comment was ultimately it's a select board decision. Personally, I think subject matter expertise is great. I will name, I'm having immediate yikes to DRB by name because they are a quasi judicial board with prescribed rules and statutes. So I wouldn't want to be putting anyone in a weird situation. So, we have advisory boards for both Waterbury Center. Park Study Committee, it's a common practice.
We have,
does
the Housing Task Force have an architect in its ranks?
we review this.
That kind of concerns me a little bit, because
And we still can't hear from the audience.
that concerns me a bit. It's almost like it's on the commission. I don't know how impartial they might be. I know there's some past select board members, Matt Fish, he construction, Dave Christian, and there's other people that are in this that maybe will even volunteer their time to assist with that. I was just, we've already got a lot of the experts on there. I understand there might be some, you don't want to cross the line because there'll be reviewing it later on. Makes sense. But I cautioned of task force that are already so involved in this housing project to be impartial. Thank you.
Other questions or comments on this? We have a motion to issue the RFP with some changes that have been articulated here tonight. It does specify in it that there's opportunity for developer questions to be submitted and then posted online, so they're accessible to all. And a deadline in late September. This document does not specify the manner or method that the select board will review in detail besides the specific notes around goals and qualifications. But Tom, would anything here preclude us from creating an advisory committee?
Not at all.
So general selection criteria, but could also outline a more specific process if desired. Other questions or comments? Anyone online? I'll just say, speaking for myself as a select board member, I often hear from folks with subject matter expertise on any of the topics, so I think that would likely happen in. Right? Yeah, right. Tom, anything else on this?
No.
Okay, and just to name the changes I heard that you will be making, including an out clause that we could take none of the qualifications. Adjustments to the language about the flood hazard overlay district, removing any reference to previous flooding. Modifying the language around further support for offering housing opportunities for individuals and families who wish to relocate and seniors wishing to downsize, but leaving it at that. Adjusting the selection criteria language to reflect Waterbury residents generally in the community. Are there any other modifications that I did not just add?
You had, it's a note, I didn't write it as modification yet, but you had mentioned you thought we should somewhere reference that this is consistent with the town, something about the town plan. I think it's just.
They'll be updated.
Okay.
Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Everyone agree what that is? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We are set to have Tom move forward with this. So thank you, Tom. We will look for that online and then follow up.
Okay.
And thanks for driving it. We'll all provide input. And there was a number of first. Great, you're ahead of schedule. Moving to the 8:20 agenda item, which is from the Waterbury Historical Society, the Vermont 250 Waterbury Committee. We have some materials. And I know Cheryl Casey is online. I don't know if she was able to speak to this.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? How's the audio? Oh, excellent. So I am, hi from lovely Newark Airport. I apologize for the less than ideal conditions. And I was not prepared for you all to be ahead of schedule, but here we go. So, and please just cut in if anything with my audio goes wonky. So I submitted the proposal, and I just had a quick summary for you all regarding that, and then I'll be happy to take any questions. So the Historical Society, we are beginning to plan our next couple of years. We're doing some longer term planning for programming projects and exhibits, particularly around topics and themes connecting to the 250th celebration of both America's independence in 2026 and the founding of the Republic of Vermont the following year. But however, we also recognize that there are broader interests in marking these momentous occasions, and we do feel strongly that the effort should be coordinated at the community level. So the society is therefore asking the select board to officially establish a committee of volunteers that will serve as a central organizing and communication hub for all 250th related activities that will be taking place, that can take place, that might take place, that we hope will take place in Waterbury. The committee would also liaise with the state 250th commission established by Governor Scott in a December 2020 executive order. And this state commission serves an analogous purpose in supporting and promoting such activities across the state. So 3 key points. 1, we are not asking for money. Rather, we're asking for the town to formally stand behind the various 250th local events and programming that will inevitably be happening. Certainly the Historical Society will be doing it over the next couple of years. And not to say we wouldn't be able to use any money that the select board or voters might see fit to appropriate for the occasion, but that's not actually part of our formal proposal. Second, we know there are already organizations and businesses in town that produce regular events, presentations, exhibits, speaker series, and so forth. These groups have already budgeted for such activities. I'm thinking Recreation Department, RW, the Rotary, the library, and they have all been copied on this proposal as a heads up / invitation to participate. And it is our hope that these organizations, among others, I know the Stagecoach Inn as a local business has also expressed interest in volunteering someone in their leadership to participate on the committee, or at least coordinate with the committee to hold some 250th themed events. And then the committee's work would include educating organizations, businesses, and the community at large about the 5 themes that the American Society for State and Local History have developed as a framework for celebrations and conversations. Those themes are detailed in the proposal memo. So the goal would be to encourage and support organizations and businesses in tailoring at least a portion of their existing event and program plans to these themes during the 2-year period. The committee would also maintain a central calendar of these local events and make sure that the state commission has the information to promote Waterbury's programming in their materials. And then third, in making this request, the Historical Society is also stepping forward, volunteering to lead the committee, to coordinate, to organize. At our last meeting, the board of directors did express their support for me being the lead contact and coordinator. But since this would be a town committee, if you do sign the resolution, the select board should, of course, have final say over its composition and leadership. That's my pitch. I'm happy to take questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Cheryl, and thanks for being ready ahead of schedule. Questions for folks on the presentation or what we're being asked to? Okay.
So as proposed, the committee would consist of members of the Historical Society, the Recreation Department, Revitalizing Waterbury, the Public Library, and the Rotary. Is that, and then we have
that is simply a suggestion and an invitation to those organizations, because we know that those organizations do annual big town events, and the library has regular programming and presentation series. It really would be open to anyone in the community who is interested. And we would advertise to solicit membership. That's our proposal. It's just those were some key local organizations that seem to us to be particularly I don't know, relevant or obvious stakeholders in an initiative such as this.
Roger, you have a question?
Revitalizing Waterbury has publicly acknowledged that this is part of our mission and that we support this. But as such, I'll recuse myself from any further comments as a select board
Okay,
Sorry. With the Rotary's involvement and Revitalizing Waterbury's involvement, we will not have, if we have 2 recusals, we will not have a quorum to vote.
since
They would not formally, technically be, it's just an invitation. They don't have to be part of the sanction of who's on the committee.
right, I will say I mean, Rotary has not made a decision on this to date. I think it's if we're benefiting financially, which I don't know if that would necessarily come in, but yeah, it's gonna be a problem if we're gonna say that might not.
Yeah, I can get a legal opinion. I mean, generally speaking, Robert's Rules of Order says if a member of board recuses themselves, they're not counted as part of the quorum. So in theory, if you've got 3 board members who recuse themselves, you've got 2 who can vote, and presumably if they both vote in the affirmative, you're okay. I can confirm that with counsel, but it's my understanding of Robert's rules.
But also, in adherence with Robert's rules, someone has to make a motion, another person to make a sentence, and second, neither of those people can be the chair.
So just for the record, the ask is very much about signing the resolution, which then acknowledges that the town will formally establish a committee. And there is no mention of any organization specifically within that resolution.
Would any of these events be raising money or just a celebration of history?
It's just celebrations. You know, if the committee establishes some events on its own to raise money, it might go towards doing more events. It might be a fundraiser for a specific project to, let's say, put a historical marker on a building, and that somehow is connected to the founding of the Republic of Vermont. So any kind of fundraising would be for a specific 250 related projects, not to benefit any organization.
I think since the organizations, Rotary and NRW wouldn't benefit financially from being on this committee, it's not really fun. Happy to have that be.
Here's my idea. I'm gonna read off the resolution and then I will move to approve the resolution and then we can vote, because she's right. It does not mention any local organizations other than people affiliated with history. So I think, all right, I'm just gonna read it. Vermont 250th Anniversary Resolution, a resolution of the Town of Waterbury, State of Vermont, supporting the 250th Anniversary Commission, whereas Vermont Governor Phil Scott signed an executive order to create Vermont 250th Anniversary Commission on December 15th, 2020 to plan, encourage, develop, coordinate, and promote observances and activities to be held in Vermont in commemoration of the historic events associated with the 250th anniversary of the 1776 signing of the Declaration of Independence, the Revolutionary War between 1775 and 1777, the founding of the Republic of Vermont in 1777, and the creation of the political foundations of the United States of America. Whereas the Vermont 250th Anniversary Commission hopes to engage all 252 cities and towns throughout many programs, projects, and events over the next several years, thereby inspiring future leaders and celebrating Vermonters' contributions to the nation over the last 250 years. Whereas by adoption of the Vermont 250th Anniversary Commission, we hope to inspire Vermonters to learn from the history, legacy, and context of the past to build stronger communities for the future. Resolved, the town of Waterbury officially establishes a local committee made up of diverse group of citizens or individuals to encourage and support local activities and liaise with the Vermont 250th Anniversary Commission. The participants of the town of Waterbury are voluntary roles and there will be no compensation for participation. Resolved, the town of Waterbury may provide funding for planning or implementation of the 250th related commemorations in their community or region as available. Resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Vermont 250th Anniversary Commission. I move to adopt this resolution as written.
You know, all you're doing here is creating a committee. You're not agreeing to fund it, to fund the initiative. You're just agreeing to create a committee. And so I think, you know, Roger, I think, is rightfully drawing a pretty hard line, given he's paid to be part of to lead revitalizing Waterbury. But I think Rotary members are unpaid. I don't see any issue with Rotary members agreeing to create a committee here.
We had a motion by Kane, a second by Tori. I'll just say, speaking for myself, I'm seeing a lot of community members trying to do their best, including Cheryl and the Historical Society wanting to get formal review from the select board, which I appreciate. And community members wanting to be forthright about their involvement and how it will relate to this. But for the resolution, we have a motion in a second. Is there further discussion on it?
I will acknowledge that the resolution is fairly boilerplate language from the state 250th Commission and just adjusted for the local context. So that is the origins of much of that language.
And just noting, as you said, Cheryl, so it's noting that we're creating a committee, but there's further ability to tailor who's on that, if the select board reviews it, who chairs it, and the like. Though I think I heard you volunteer.
Yes. Well, and this was essentially the proposal. The Historical Society wanted to say, look, will the town formally, put their name behind this committee, and the Historical Society will coordinate, organize, lead, make it happen. And I was selected and supported by our board of directors to be that single point of contact. So if the select board is also amenable to that, happy to do it.
Other questions or discussion on this? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed and any abstaining? Brother abstained. All right, so we have approved with 3 votes the anniversary resolution. We can get a signed copy of this. Do we want to make any other statements or motions with regard to the committee and its former function?
No, I was just going to say adopted by the select board of the town of Waterbury, the state of Vermont, this day of August 4th, 2025.
And it notes that a copy will be sent to the state so they can track our participation and that Waterbury opted in. Thank you, the Historical Society. I'm just wanting to give the Historical Society guidance in terms of next steps, but I think the understanding is they're open to advertising for a committee and perhaps reporting back to select board at a future meeting regarding interest for final approval. Does that seem like a workable next step?
Correct, that does.
Great. Is there any questions or concerns about that from the board? Seeing none? Any questions or comments? Bill, you stood up and are you good? Just making sure. Tom, any other questions or comments?
No question, just a comment that for folks be aware of going forward that this committee will be a public body. So open meeting laws will apply.
The committee would be a public body. And we'll come back with the proposed membership for our review and approval at a later point. Any other questions?
Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate your time on this.
Thanks for bringing it forward and
yeah.
All right. Anything else on this? All right. circulate my copy for signing, or we can print a single-sided one on nice paper. And get that to Cheryl. Alrighty, with that, we are on to the next item, which is review of draft select board input for town plan aspirations, goals, and strategies. And I aspired to have this to all of you before the weekend, but I didn't, but I do have a document I can screen share. And
I'll make you
just
co-host.
print a couple, copies. Actually, Katie, would you mind telling us off the printer?
You got it.
I'll grab it.
I already stood up.
Your co-host.
Tom's on that, now I have the power. So I think we've heard about this rather in depth last week when the staff was here, but I got asked to respond on behalf of the select board about our aspirations, goals, and strategies for the local government chapter of the town plan. And so I'm glad we have some extended time on the agenda because I drafted some, but they're not due until Sunday. So there's an opportunity for anyone on the board to provide input. And I did not get into the strategy, the specific ways to do these things. So truly, this is a draft in an open discussion time for the board. And then I will also share this with Mike, who's not here. So starting at the top, but maybe at the bottom, mark that outline. This is part of the town plan update. There's this wonderful website. I'm still looking to our screen, but the Waterbury plan, at the bottom, I copied the graph, which I just thought was interesting for us as select board members. I think, and Billy can correct me if I'm wrong regarding the level of public engagement this received, but I think folks have funded some survey. 409 responses, so number of folks. I noted that the qualities that are reflected here are access to information about community issues, opportunities to participate in community affairs, responsive municipal government to citizen concern, and value of services for municipal taxes paid, and educational services for taxes paid. For the purposes of answering on behalf of the select board, I took kind of the first four and drafted some aspiration that we provide high quality, high value municipal facilities that are just the timely, accessible information about issues, and that responsive local government that's able to meet the needs of residents and adapt to meet current and future challenges. The italics below each title, the italics, are kind of the description of what the specific things should be. So I felt really good about the aspirations, and then it suddenly got a lot harder. So also acknowledging that like we have a municipal manager form of government, and so what is a select board leadership like guidance responsibility as opposed to a asking the manager to do something moment or some other questions that I had. But mostly I just wanted to share this with the board. Again, I'll submit it on Sunday, but we kind of have a week for folks to provide input, but we can also just happy to do some live editing and working now while we have some time on the agenda. Commission member? It's not by me.
I'll bite.
Yeah.
Can you just define the evaluation process for municipal services? I just hung up on that. I'm just not sure what it means.
I don't either, but I will name that I was struggling with saying, we want things that are high quality and high value. And then like, how on earth do we measure that? So I said, well, our goal should be figure that out. I mean, I'll also need Tom, you completed this as the manager, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, thoughts, welcome. I told Tom I was going to steal his vote, no pride of authorship. So if it's too confusing, you can just get rid of it. This was me just throwing things out there.
Question, value added is a good term. If you're looking to like high quality, high value, value added services to residents. Something along those lines. This is a.
Could you define that? Like what sort of value would we be adding?
So if you improve the sidewalks, you improve the added value is somebody's not tripping going down the sidewalk. Or they can, walk freely with less, things, canes or things like that. Something like that.
So it's specifically, are you suggesting they can add it to number one, their aspirations? Oh, that's okay.
Oh, sorry, it was just a recommendation.
I like the recommendation, I just wanted to like.
Yeah, it's just, it's a buzzword, but.
Right, so like, where would you put it in? On number one, I presume, or?
Like, that's what I thought Alyssa was talking about, so that's why I just wanted to recommend it. Just.
Or maybe instead of high value, saying value added, I was using the language from the survey and which is what the planning commission sent out to folks, and they noted that value of services for municipal taxes paid, so that was the language I was trying to copy around, which is a good value for this.
It's like, it's not like.
No.
More detail. Yeah.
Amy has her hand up, and knowing that select board members likely need some time to think because they're just looking at this now. Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I love the direction you're headed. I was just going to offer some guidance or suggested approach to think about value. Value added, just to clarify in my experiences, is usually from the consumer or the service recipient point of view. So what do they deem valuable? And then translating that into how can the service provider or the production entity produce that good for those folks. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about this. I love this stuff.
Thanks, Amy.
I guess one comment, if it's okay. One thing I think about, I don't know if it's an aspiration or a goal, or both, but I think about the last town meeting day where the warning was, I think, written in part to increase participation, get people out to show up at town meeting. And so I wonder, is that, and I know you've talked about that quite a bit, Alyssa, how that's, you just want people to participate. So is that an aspiration or a goal to somehow
democracy,
somehow increase our numbers?
cultivate, sure, those are good words. Yeah.
Another thing I just offer here as you're thinking through this. So think of aspirations, goals down to strategies and to actions are linked. So they're on an altitude level. You start with this kind of visionary, I'd really like this. And then you need to think about defining, well, what is this? And that's how the customer or the recipient helps define that. And then you folks are going to come up with some strategies like Tom just suggested, referencing, which is this communication approach. That's a strategy. And then how are you going to pull that off? That's the to-do list. Does that help kind of frame how to think about how these all link? And ideally, you would link them. You'd be very intentional about, I have this vision, here's the goal or goals associated with moving us towards that vision. And here are the kind of high level playbooks that we want to put forward. And then you end up having like a very specific who's doing what by when, and build that into your review for the year. Quarterly, perhaps.
And just to say, so the context for all this is it's going to go into a town plan, and we have, so appreciate that they do. And so those are all pieces that can live in the town plan as that being a planning document, which has a longer time horizon. I just wanted to say that. And so I looked at what I feel like a lot of the select board does is on an annual basis. And so how we incorporate that into a long-term plan. Other things folks want to throw out? Oh, Billy. His moment has come.
It's okay. It's really big. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the planning commission, but one more tool we provided in the link was a summary of the visioning sessions. So you could see what the residents had said about each of these topics. So there is a section and we got to fit what the draft, this is already fit a lot of that. You may want to look at those because we see that as a planning commission, that's kind of a guidepost
they're supposed to be using, what the town is. But one of the things that you don't have, and I guess something that just it's on 26 of those summaries, it's on our website, it's under the vision section. But point 6 here is recognize considerations for public safety such as reconstituting the town. But there's six, so I just want to, this is a tool there that you can use to see what it comes.
And that's off of this. Sorry, to share really earlier, is that correct?
What we did was, once we got all the visioning sessions, we put it into, we actually used AI to actually make these summaries, so we can never be seen as being biased. But this is sort of just how we did this for each chapter, so you can kind of see a condensed version of what everybody said at the visioning session. And then you also have the tool.
Thanks, good, really appreciate it. And other note while you're still here is just to name in terms of process, you have to go to planning commission with these watching or with the navigate the internet live. There is a series, where's the info on when you're consolidating, do you know what I'm talking about?
So there's
Oh, here, it's on. Yeah. So just to name, like where this is going is there's select board input, there's input from, in this case, Tom, as town manager, from all these other groups, so that also on August 25th, depending on the responses that we all submit, there also will be a conversation about how all of these pieces go together from all different constituents and stakeholders. So those are at planning commission meeting.
The key point that we're expecting to have to spend a lot of time on is the interaction between the chat, how they work together. I mean, if I had a suggested view, I would say we should be more energy efficient, electrified as a town body. I know Tom and I talked a little bit about it, but that isn't necessarily purely local government because it goes to the entity chat. But the point is it plays together, and it's one of the things we can control, that we can use tools, whether we can look at biodiesel trucks as we, age the fleet out and things like that. So that, I guess just in terms of process, the idea is I think we reached out to 41 groups. I don't know that that's exactly right. I'd ask you to go out and to the extent you're talking to people in any of these groups, please ask them to respond. Definitely want their input. This is the best source of information we have. Is sort of these groups that really are stakeholders. It'd be great.
Thanks, so.
Thanks.
So then, new source of info, it feels that we should likely review before finalizing this project.
To address that, encouraging more democratic. We might want to say Waterbury residents have access to timely, informative, and easily accessible information and are actively engaged in decision-making on municipal issues.
I think what the folks feel is the best course of action in regards to that's the best that I looked at the high level summary, but not the individual detail. The folks want to do that and then email me. I guess I can share again if we're comfortable with the aspirations. We could do follow-up work on the goals and strategies, of which there is many more, and as has been noted, they follow from. So I made the update. Roger just proposed actively engaged in decision making on municipal issues. It's after the Doom, which is why we tried to preview it, and I totally own that I didn't get it out to folks in time. Or we can do a Zoom meeting or something else. I don't know what works for perfectly. It's 10.
Oh.
Since I planning on what boards and commissions. on
Okay,
the
so we
spot.
can figure out goals.
Or I guess my thought being, if we're comfortable with the aspirations, I think we can have more goals and strategies that support them. That folks can email me individually. Circulate to everyone. Meeting.
A lot easier to do that than Brian Wordsmith as a group.
Live, it's so fun. All right, well, thanks for being flexible, and follow on that. Anything else on that item? Continuing ahead of schedule, so we will be on select board and municipal manager informational updates. Anyone excited to take this one off?
I'll go first. Natural disaster is recruiting for the Corps. We need volunteers who want to be on the ground. We have plenty of volunteers who would like to do work on their laptops. And we need volunteers who like to get muddy for neighborhood team leads. I have more information on that. I will be making pamphlets with QR codes on them to sign up to volunteer and putting them in various locations that get very populated later in the evening to see if we can recruit. So that's my update.
Thanks, Nate.
Yeah, I met the rec committee this past week. Katrina presented her piece on the sliding scale for the upcoming after school program. And we talked about the proposed field house and encourage them to continue to push forward and identify champions within the community that supported that and that they could recruit to push those forward. Just observing that these large projects take time to develop, time to gather enough support and momentum to pass a bond. And I think it's the time is right for trying to get that moving forward.
Thanks, Rob. Other updates, I don't think there's been any additional housing task force meetings since our last meeting. So I just did notes and follow-up for that group. We'll get any other updates this evening.
Tree board hasn't met in a while, so I don't really have any update on that, but I will say I did finish a little draft of the event and it's that might actually get connected. And I know a couple of people have reached out about getting, reviewing the draft before. So it's something.
This has been years in the making, so this will be good. Okay. The current is rough. Yeah, couple things. The Better Connections grant. Don't have a kickoff meeting scheduled with the big steering committee yet. We have an internal kickoff on the 14th with a consultant, so it's moving. It just took a few weeks longer to get started than we'd hoped, just because of schedules. I hope people have noticed the pool for the first time since I've been here. The pool is not brown. That's because of the resurfacing, and then and they went in and they just applied some chemicals directly in the shower under. We have circulation issues, and did some scrubbing, and they've stayed ahead of it this year. So that's been pretty awesome. We still have the circulation issues, so I think dealing with that might be a next capital project, but been a much better summer than last year when it was just by July 15th, really uninviting to go swim in a pool where there's just visible algae everywhere that we really couldn't control. So glad to see that. I just want to give an update on some police issues. I know we've had conversations in public here with the county sheriff. Behind the scenes, I've got some help that will help me review a contract with the county sheriff before it comes to you and potentially review our state police contract about future changes. So behind the scenes, Ingrid Jonas, who is retired with the Vermont State Police and did her whole career there, has agreed to give me some help, and she's always been a resource. Ingrid right now is working for the Burlington mayor on some of their but not for much longer in a full-time capacity. So she's been helpful in the past, and she said she'll be helpful in the future, and that'll be great. And then VLCT has gentleman available to help that I met with last week named Trevor Whipple. Trevor was the chief of Barry for a number of years and then moved up and was the chief of South Burlington before retiring there, and has a great record. And so another resource. So I'm hoping as we move forward, I can bring in that in-house. I can bring that expertise I need in-house so we can, when we talk about a county sheriff contractor, some pivot. We've done what Cheryl suggested about Stanley Wasson already. So that's going to be, I think, helpful to all of us, and just wanted to thank them both publicly. And that's it for me.
Next meeting. So did I hear about it? Yeah. Just make it the least agenda. Where's the second? You listed it.
Reappraisal update could go on there.
Great. We noted sidewalks.
We can probably, I think, let's put sidewalks and recreation both on there. I think we can have them both ready. Certainly recreation will be ready, but.
Other. Yes.
Yes, I get, no, will be on the minutes agenda. I would find the time to reach out to her and so, she might be available for me.
Other items, so Susan, if we can get them.
On anything happening at Woody Avenue? Or are we just set, still a waiting game?
Not quite there in Woody Avenue for next meeting.
Start with that. Yeah, great. We are still at the schedule, so it's 8:30. We do have further negotiations update if someone wants to make motions for executive session.
I move to find that premature public knowledge of ongoing labor negotiations will place the town of Waterbury at a substantial disadvantage.
Second. Motion by Ian, second by Tori. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention?
I move to enter executive session.
Second. Motion by Ian, second by Terry. All those in favor, please say aye. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstention? All right. We will head inside for executive session.